It wasn't just the Dark Angels that were struggling a bit in current 40k, the Custodes had arguably one of the weakest Codex releases of the entire edition. They dropped a load of power and they were really in not a good spot at all when the Codex first came out, and even since then they have still been struggling along and are sitting pretty near the bottom of the barrel in terms of competitiveness. So this balanced data slate really did need to do quite a lot to bring them up into a more balanced position. They really needed to address some of their very subpar army rules, as well as a few other interactions from the main core rules that were really impacting the Custodes. And I have to say, I think they've actually done an alright job in this data slate. So a couple of their detachments were adjusted, the Shield Host and the Auric Champions. Previously, the Shield Host gave you a once per battle ability where you could get critical hits on a 5+ rather than a 6+, and also +1 AP for all of your units with the Martial Katara ability. It wasn't an awful rule in itself, but being only once per battle just made it really quite rubbish. This has now changed to a choice each battle round. So you can now pick either of those options. You can pick whether you want +1 AP or those 5+ critical hits, and you do that each battle round. So now you get those buffs the entire game, which immediately, straight on the face of it, makes it much better. And although you don't get both buffs anymore, I do like the fact that you can now choose them, so you can weigh up which is going to be more effective in a given battle round, whether you are going to need that bonus AP, or if you think the 5+ crits are going to be more beneficial for the units that you are going to have in combat that battle round. And just all in all, it makes the detachment way more reliable because you don't have to go all in on that one specific turn. You do get these buffs, albeit in a slightly reduced form, but you get those buffs every single battle round, so your entire army can be getting that improved output across the entire game. On top of that, one of the enhancements for the detachment also got a little buff. The Castellan's mark dropped to 20 points from 30, which does just make it a little bit spicier and potentially a little bit easier to fit into your army. But I mean, let's be honest, with a spare 10 points, you're probably not going to be able to get much extra in a Custodes list. The other detachment that got buffed is the Auric Champions. This now changes quite dramatically. Now, instead of only working on Custodes characters, so those individual models, it is now on character units. So it is a very small change, but it now means that instead of just those individual models getting it, units led by your shield captains or your blade champions will now also get that buff. So now your entire squad can be +1 to wound against a chosen enemy unit. And this just makes the entire detachment so much better and actually have an impact on most of your units rather than just literally 3 or 4 individual models, which is what it had before. And it was always just a really feels bad detachment because you were taking this whole detachment and really only getting any kind of benefit on a couple of models. So it never really made sense to me why this new wording wasn't how it always was, because it just makes more sense to me. But overall, for such a small change, it does drastically alter how good this detachment is. And I think both the Auric Champions and the Shield Host detachments are now going to be very strong picks for Custodes players. They really are going to give your armies a significant amount more hitting power over the course of the game. On top of those changes, the Custodes also see some welcome points drops, notably in their Forge World units. So the Agamatus, the Aquilon and the Venatari Custodians all drop, as does the Telemon and the Pallas Gravitac, and then even the Guard with the Adrasite and the Pyrothite Spears drop 2. The biggest ones for me are the Telemon dropping down 20 from 235 to 215, which I think is just a really solid value for a toughness 10, 12 wound unit with a 4-up invuln, and I just love the look of Telemons, so I really do think you may see a few more of them on the battlefield once again at this reduced price. In terms of an overall winner though, I think the Venatari are the biggest winners from this. They have dropped a whopping 35 points for 3 of them, so going down from 200 points to just 165. So these guys are now only 55 points each, and they bring you a really durable, really fast moving deep strike unit that can get around the board and get where you need them very easily. And also on their datasheet, they have an ability to let them rapid ingress for 0 CP, so they can be invaluable, not to mention relatively cheap now, for going after those far away enemy objectives or just dropping in ready to charge in your next turn. And they are quite good in combat. They've got 5 strength 7, -2 AP, 2 damage attacks with Lance, and then of course on top of that they get the Qatar buffs, so they really can do a lot of damage, especially in something like the Shield Host Detachment, for a very reasonable price now. The other big things that changed for the Custodes in terms of the overarching game rules is of course the change to Devastating Wounds that we mentioned yesterday. This does help the Custodes a lot, although they lost their blanket 4-up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds like they had in the Index. They do still have some ways to get those Feel No Pains, and in particular things like Arcane Genetic Alchemy, that gives you that 4-up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds in the Shield Host Detachment. So whilst it's not quite as easy and automatic as it was back in the Index, it is still a nice cheap 1 command point and is now back to being a very solid way to protect you from Devastating Wounds again. And then on top of that, there has also been a change in how the using stratagems for 0 CP abilities work. So on things like your Marine captains or your Custodes shield captains, this has now changed. In the new data slate, these kind of rules now just reduce the CP cost by 1. So it doesn't always make them free anymore. If you are doing this on a 2 CP stratagem, it just drops it down to 1. But crucially, this isn't only on battle tactic stratagems anymore. You can use it on any stratagem. So with your shield captain, you can still do stuff like Arcane Genetic Alchemy for 0 CP because it's only 1 to begin with. But now, even in something like the Auric Champions Detachment, you can use a shield captain to say reduce Vigil Unending by 1, so it goes down from 2 CP to just 1, but you can actually use the shield captain's ability on it despite it being an Epic Deed stratagem because of the changes in this balanced data slate. So I would say overall this has improved massively. It still gets you that 0 CP stratagems most of the time, but it isn't just always a blanket 0 CP, it's just -1. So on those 2 CP stratagems, you are just reducing it by 1, but I think that is more than made up by the fact that you can use this ability on any stratagem now, and it really is going to allow you overall to just use more worthwhile stratagems over the course of the battle for that little bit cheaper. I think in general, the Custodes have, like the Dark Angels, come out of this balanced data slate quite well. They've gained a lot of power in 2 of their detachments, which I think we will see quite a lot now, and then a few key points drops in things like the Telemon and the Venatari. I just overall think they are in a much stronger spot than they were before, and I think this change should hopefully help them begin to crawl back up the leaderboards a bit. They are a bit more durable, they are a lot more killy in those 2 detachments specifically, and they are just a little bit cheaper too. And that is going to be it for this video. As always, what do you make of these changes, and what do you make of the Custodes now, and will you be trying out either the Shield Host or the Auric Champions detachments with their updated rules? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later guys.